is the most potent neurotoxin known to man that is not radioactive.
Wow, I guess Kennedy's never heard of sarin gas or Novichok, and frankly it's just piffle. And to me it's very disturbing that a national, international news channel would actually have somebody on who's just frankly lying, and it makes me concerned about what they actually want their viewers to do and the effects on those viewers. I am Huples Cat. This video, if you want to watch it, you'll probably get something out of it whether you are anti-vax or not. The video basically will show 3 types of issue over the period of the video that can affect you and allow you to be more susceptible to misinformation on vaccine. And specifically, of course, because we're in a pandemic that's global, COVID-19 vaccines. It's going to show how the anti-vax movement prior to and during COVID-19 have systemically lied. These people are absolutely rich. They're making a lot of money at the top end. Of course, if you're in 10,000 American Day plus travel expenses and you're selling books to promote the untruth that autism is causally related to vaccination of young children, whereas it isn't, there is no causational link. It's proven. Sorry, it is. It's done. Because we don't look at problems in a cold, calculating, computer-like way. For example, look at this. Look at this advert. If you've got this in your Facebook feed or whatever, on your Instagram, this is really a powerful message. It triggers you on every level. It's incredibly strong. When I read this, I feel it affecting me. I feel it making me doubt vaccination.
Something called identifiable victim bias. Anti-vaxxers will often focus on one powerful story about a child who they say was harmed by a vaccine.
I think almost everyone knows someone that has had a kid with an adverse reaction.
I personally have not experienced that with my kids, but I know people that have.
However, sympathies to Kate and her family. Not only did she die from sepsis that wasn't treated right, the family now trying to get people more aware of what sepsis is, and they're trying to get doctors and professionals more aware of it. Tragic loss. They're now being abused after her death by the anti-vaxxers. The anti-vaxxers who started this knew that she did not die from the flu vaccine. They knew that, and yet they decided to tell the world she did. And the reason they did that is because they're using lies, not unclear to them when they start this. And the other factor is other people who want proof of a stance will send this stuff everywhere. As a newly retired nurse, I believe there's no pit deep enough to throw the people who do this deliberately into. They're just hideous, horrible, nasty people. However, COVID has at least doubled, and I would say probably 100 times to 1,000 times amplified the anti-vax movement. And the people behind the original evil, which is to allow large numbers of children to be at risk from brain abscesses from measles and whooping cough and death and stuff like that, those people are partially behind the COVID-19 anti-vax movement, and they're using exactly the same techniques in exactly the same way, and people are still falling for it, and it's very, very tragic and very, very sad. A subscriber of mine recently did a video where he said he was very, very unhappy that he had to be vaccinated, was either that or lose his job. I guess he works as a bouncer, I think that's what it was, and frankly in Ontario you're not working unless you're vaccinated in healthcare or in hospitality, and he felt that he betrayed something. He hadn't betrayed anything. It's just that, you know, you're either vaccinated or you're unvaccinated. If you're unvaccinated, fine, but there's certain jobs you're not going to be able to do whilst the pandemic rages. This isn't about standing on a hill waving a flag. This isn't a patriotic act either way. It's simply a healthcare act, and it's simply that the majority population do not want unvaccinated people near them because they're worried about breakthrough. And I think that's fair enough. And they don't want unvaccinated gathering because they're worried about the healthcare system. And I don't think that's fair enough. They're both realities. Protest outside hospitals and claim that's freedom, when in point of fact what you're using is the threat or actuality of violence to tyrannize other people into doing things differently, which is the antithesis of freedom. I'm not going to get into freedom. Your freedom, in my opinion, goes only so far as you don't hurt or damage other people. Once you get to that point, you no longer have the freedom to be free. You're not an individual living in a bubble. Your actions have consequences. You have to actually be aware of the greater society around you, whether you want to or not. And society mostly accommodates the extremists as far as we can. But when we're talking about infections, no. TB, HIV, no. COVID-19 is going to be the same. I've been warning about it for months, nobody's listening to me, but that's fine. The COVID has and still does kill in low percentages. It sends to hospital in low percentages. When you're talking about a huge population, those low percentages translate into dramatic effects on healthcare. No one is dead on the sidewalk. People have been found during peak in their homes dead because they had no family or friends. So perhaps it's easy to have
probability neglect. You have far greater risk of getting a brain infection from the measles than suffering a serious side effect from the vaccine. But those odds mean nothing when you're afraid.
It was terrifying. Oh my gosh, I hope they're not the, one in a gazillion who is going to have some horrific reaction.
There's lots of BS about side effects online and from people, neighbours and stuff like that. They also attack the efficiency. I mean, that's fine. The efficiency is dropping over time as you'd expect it with a new vaccine and a new virus that's mutating. As I keep telling people, 20% increases your odds by 20%. Would you have 20% or 0? Well, the answer is 20%. Because the side effects are trivial and minimal and the disease is awful. But it's easy to fudge that, it's easy to amplify the personal and look at the individuals who may have had vaccine related issues and died. Every time somebody died in the States, my goodness, it was on all your news programs. I think it was like 10 or 12 of them. People think, oh, there's 1 million people dead from the vaccine. No, there isn't. There really isn't. So don't do anything.
Omission bias, our tendency to do nothing when faced with tough choices. Parents won't vaccinate because they don't want to be responsible for harming their child.
It's so dangerous to vaccinate. We're just not going to do it.
Is a default. One of the mid-range channels that is building a home very slowly like I am, he is not doing anything because he's worried about harming his kid. And by not doing anything, he's really putting his kid at risk. And it's been explained, I mean, he's been shown the stats. But he can't get over his illogical delusion that he's doing the right thing, because he isn't. So there is a group of preppers who do prepping for money and AdSense and subscribers and, I guess, ego. And we all do that to some degree. There's a lot of money to be made, and a lot of videos to be made, a lot of subscribers to be gained by standing up for freedom. Although you're not standing up for freedom, you're using YouTube. Right? That's a big clue that you're not standing up for freedom as you define it online the way they do. And they are absolutely sucked into this. And as soon as you get sucked into this rabbit hole, you can find more and more evidence that backs up your point of view. And as you find more and more evidence and put more and more evidence out online, more and more of your subscribers, and these anti-vaxxers are vocal. It used to be when I was growing up, stupid people knew enough to keep the gob shut. Doesn't seem to be the way anymore, does it? I'm not calling them all stupid. Some of them are. But the bottom line is they claim sheeple are getting vaccinated because the sheeple don't know what they're doing and the sheeple don't realise that they're whatever. But they don't actually see that they're actually the sheep. They are actually targeting themselves. They are actually radicalising themselves. They are actually in a box. I mean, a lot of people I used to respect, I don't watch anymore because, frankly, they're just anti-vaxxers. And in September 2021, that tells me that they are capable of being incredibly deluded and dangerous to others, or they just want money. And I ain't got no time for that. Herbal medicines is one of the big things in prepping. If there's no medicines available, you'll have to switch to herbal. I would recommend you use big pharma medicines wherever possible, for the simple reason they're actually a lot safer than herbal. I have seen at least one patient die from herbal medications that the family insisted on giving them, and we said no, and we explained why not. And they gave the medication, and of course the patient flatlined. As we knew they would, because just because it's a flower or just because it's a nut or because it's got natural written on it doesn't mean it doesn't have side effects. If you don't believe me, go out there and just randomly collect mushrooms and eat them and see what happens to you. The truth is most medicines and most vaccines have side effects. Some of them are pretty significant and commonish ones, but they're all given, generally speaking. There are errors. Generally speaking, they're given because they're a lot safer than the diseases they're preventing. This is a huge one for preppers. Fear of harming their children leads them to believe in body purity. It also is what's behind the homeschool movement and segregating people into sects based usually on religions rather than intermingling with the broader society. They want to stay pure, both in mind, spirit and body, compared to society which they see as terminal, dangerous, collapsing. I think they might be right about part of that, but the truth is that they don't believe that they personally can catch the disease because they don't believe they can, because they're, I don't know, you look at some of them online, they're like the fatter than me. Like, I don't know what, the delusion is right there in the 60-year-old group, I'll tell you that. But the bottom line is they don't think they can catch it, they don't think they can give it to the kids, and if they do, they don't think it's going to be a problem. So why should they wear a mask? Why should they distance? Why should they vaccinate? They don't believe what they're being told by people like me, who know a lot more than they do, that they're still at risk of catching it and dying from it. Their kids are still at risk from catching it and dying from it. And the best and most effective way to prevent, to mitigate that SHTF for their family is to be vaccinated. And they simply refuse to believe it. And they collect evidence online that proves that they're smarter than me. But they're also not dumber than me. The motivations are different. Their reasoning and their life experience is different. But they're not basing their decision on truth or logic. They're basing a lot of it on the misinformation that people are being paid to give them, that people are getting money to give them. You can make the same argument about public health officials, but frankly they don't get that much money, and they're not getting bonuses because of COVID. I'll tell you that right now. Nor is Big Pharma. Yeah, they're going to make a amount of money, all of the groups, out of vaccination, but there are plenty of actually socialist nationalised versions of vaccines available in parts of the world. Because we have capitalism in North America, we don't allow them in here to give competition to ours, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense to ignore millions dead around the planet. Over 650,000 dead in America. And a large minority of them are young, healthy people with decades of lifespan ahead of them. Average lifespan has dropped by years across the Western world and everywhere actually because of COVID-19. It's the most significant thing that's ever happened in healthcare since 1918, and it's being ignored, it's being trivialized, it's being dismissed by a large group of people, about 5 to 7% of the population, with probably more than that have some doubts, and it's being enabled by a lot of preppers. I would strongly encourage you just to look at this slide and think about it. This is from Ontario from the other day, and it's not a statistical anomaly. Every day and every way we see this. And when people say, Israel's got a lot of cases. Yeah, they do. Israel vaccinated a large percentage of its population earlier. It's now starting booster vaccines, which is arguable because they think they're seeing rates of breakthrough increase. So they're doing that because they have the money and the vaccines to do it. And they have a large number of their population who aren't vaccinated or vaccinated inappropriately due to ethnic origin. And so breakthrough's common. But you know, I don't see pictures on TV explain to me why Israeli healthcare is dying like I see in the southern states and Alberta. I don't see that. You know why I don't see it? Because a large number of the people are vaccinated. Why do you think England right now is opening up and doing okay? Well, okay, Johnson's an idiot, but they have vaccinated a large percentage. And it turns out that 70% isn't very good. 80% is just about the borderline you need to stop hospitals collapsing. If we can get to 90%, 95%, or preferably 100% vaccinated, this disease effectively will go away. If enough people on the planet are vaccinated, it can't transfer. If it can't transfer from person to person, it'll die off and go away. And yet, these anti-vaxxers are fighting for the right to allow COVID-19 to destroy our lives and be endemic for decades. That's what they're fighting for. And I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, and even if you didn't, and you want to give me a subscription, that would be appreciated from the bottom of my heart, but it's not necessary. And if you want to give me a thumbs up, please do, because frankly, I don't even really look at them these days, because it's whatever. The best and most effective way of telling me off, or correcting me, or agreeing, or explaining beyond what I've said in this video is to leave a detailed comment. You can write detailed comments. I would ask you not to put lies into those comments. There is people out there who are doing that frequently, but I'm not allowing people to write lies. I'm just not, because there's enough misinformation out there as there is, and people are actually putting lies into comments on my videos. They don't seem to appreciate what my healthcare background is.
We catch up with Del Bigtree. You're considered a leader in this movement. Why do you believe so much in it?
Every day someone recognizes my child's injured, or my cousin, I watched their child regress into autism.
Recognize that? Identifiable victim bias. With all due respect, there are multiple studies with hundreds of thousands of subjects. That there was one in 2016 and one in 2019.
That said what?
Hundreds of thousands of subjects that said there's no link between the MMR vaccine and autism.
The Denmark study.
Are they untrue?
It's bad science. Most of it's being funded by people who make money off of selling vaccines.
Not true. Many patents for childhood vaccines have expired and are not a big moneymaker for drug companies.
Here's the point. I want my children to get the measles. The people who get the measles will have lifetime immunity for life.
But what about the 140,000 people who died of measles in 2018? And so they should ignore the measles outbreak.
Absolutely.
That have been, and it is due to a drop in vaccinations.
That's not true.
Come on. I just want you to speak to parents who are vaccine hesitant, who are really worried about misinformation.
Yes.
And what do you say to them?
Do your own research.
And if they do their research and they're still not sure?
That's what I would say. Don't do anything you're not sure about.
Hear that? He's saying do nothing. That's omission bias. These parents did that, and they learned the hard way.
My advice to vaccine hesitant parents would be to completely understand how you feel.
Get informed about the real risks of these actual preventable diseases.
Not just get scared into a bunch of misinformation.
Get vaccinated. You can quote a snapshot of a graph because people don't understand statistics, and you can say X and Y is happening. I'll also mention the fact of cardiovascular disease in children from vaccination. It's less than cardiovascular disease in children from COVID-19 disease. The problem is there's been a lot of misinformation. You'll see a slide later on from Alberta, Canada. They opened up on July 1st, Canada Day, and fully opened. They actually did the most astounding things. They actually said that the people who tested positive for COVID-19 didn't need to quarantine. I mean, come on. You don't need to be an anti-vaxxer or a vaccination pro or a scientist to look at information like that from your government and go, they're wrong, I'm going to quarantine if I feel sick. But people don't. This is upon the incorrect information or the tiny amount of partial data that they can twist, and they create a worldview. And that worldview gets solider and solider over time because their Facebook feeds, their Instagram feeds, their YouTube videos, their friends and neighbours agree with them. And it becomes a very solid, real thing, to the point where people will murder people who they don't know because they're not going to put a mask on in a store where they're asked to. It's going crazy. This tiny handful of people are causing so much mayhem and disruption that all of us, including myself, are losing our freedoms because of it. If the majority of the population was vaccinated, we wouldn't need vaccine passports. Doodles! This video has been brought to you by Wolfie Cherry Productions. Wolfie stands on guard for tea, with production assistance from Gracie Cat, who's now down to £16.5. Well done, Gracie, keep it up.